It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
Good moment with Barnet Bain.
Good moment.
It's great to be here. I'm just watching you settle in.
Yeah, right.
And that's quite an experience. It's like a 3-ring circus here just watching you.
Well, it's been a little bit of a circus this morning.
But I do want to honor you for setting up this forest of cameras here and single-handedly managing all the logistics. We have trying to keep
we have friends.
Yeah, we have friends. In case you haven't noticed, anybody that is, those of you that are sitting in the car driving, you will not have noticed quite as quickly as those of you that are looking at video podcasts of this. We have friends. We brought friends. So
it's fun to have
I do know
friends
more
over.
people than just Freeman.
That's not many more, but
Not that many.
But it's fun to have friends, and it's fun to be on air. And what are we talking about today?
Well, I had a thought very early this morning. I was thinking, well, you know, we're not, and I mentioned this to you earlier, we meet as we often do before the show at a local coffee shop. And I was saying to you that this constant orientation to fixing things in my own life. You know, I can improve this, I can fix this, I can fix myself, I can self-improvement. Yes. And, you know, so when is there going to be the last workshop?
Yeah, that's right.
So I can fix this, I can moderate this, I can improve this, and at some point there is this seasoning. We come to understand that there's an entirely different approach to the challenges of life that is not about fixing, but is about changing.
Yeah, well, the fixing, here's the challenge. The fixing.
Well, wait, I'm going to put a button on this, and then you can, I'll open it up for you.
Okay.
But before we go there, I want to finish the thought. So I had this image on my computer of a computer icon, and you do the double click, and suddenly it opens up to an entirely new context and content. It's entirely new.
Like a new program.
It's an entirely new program. And I realized it's such a perfect metaphor. It's almost a hieroglyph that is so freighted with an entirely different energy beyond anything that I have in my structured memory, anything that I'm bringing from the past, anything that I can expect, anything that I can have a reference for. And I do this double click, and there's an entirely different world that is awaiting for me.
Yeah.
So I'm inviting us now to explore on the show today, to explore what it might be to double click into an entirely different relationship with everything that is. And now I throw it to you because I know you were going to go somewhere with that.
Yeah. Well, no, I love that. So the opening up to a whole new way of seeing and perceiving and conceiving of our lives and the world around us is beautiful. The fixing piece is often, in my experience, a habit. So we get in the first my first experiences with self-improvement are wonderful, and it's like, wow, there's this other thing I could be doing, and wouldn't it be great? And then at some point, the fixing has a life of its own. It's like the constant analyzing and what am I working on now, and there is this element of when does the seeker become a finder?
Becomes another strategy of the ego to find a new way to control.
Exactly.
So with that in mind as a backdrop,
Okay.
it might be really fun and enlightening
I'm
to
ready.
explore what are the relationships that we can find in the world to encourage us to step beyond the backyard of what is already known. Where do we find way showers and guides that lead us towards a little off trail, up a trailhead to a map?
Well, we find them here in the KVTA studio.
We find them right here. We find them right here in the
how
room.
that works?
Right here in the room.
I know where you're going.
You do?
Yeah.
This is not your first
Yeah, it's not
barbecue?
my first barbecue.
Okay, well, then you're welcome back next week, too. You can come home. You can come back. So I want to introduce our listeners to my friends. That's the real agenda here. Is just another way to spend time with my friends. I'm so happy that you're both here. People in the car are wondering, well, who's here? Who's here? So I have Inga Canfield here. Inga is my really, really dear friend. She is a writer, a gorgeous writer, and a painter and an artist and a creator, the best ad-libber, the funniest, deepest, most present, emotionally sophisticated.
And she's debuting as a radio personality today. So we're just adding that
here,
to her long list.
Right
of
here. Yes, to her long list.
talents
Right here. We're going to be able to look back and say,
that's right. It all started here.
This is where it all went off the rails.
Indeed.
Right here.
That's where she bit the apple.
Right here. So
All right.
Inga Canfield is here. And also my friend Dawa Phillips. Dawa Phillips Tarchin, or is it Dawa Tarchin Phillips? I never get that part because there's also sometimes I hear Lama Dawa Tarchin Phillips and then Monk Dawa. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, but Dawa is a meditation teacher and a guide for many, a lay Buddhist practitioner for many, many years, and a very, very dear friend and a very bright light. And I'm so glad that you're here today.
So guide us into this new terrain. Barnet set this up. There are moments, and there's language for this, but it can be brittle, so I kind of almost want to even avoid what it's been called. But just for the sake of context, some people call it a paradigm shift, a quantum leap. There are moments where a new program opens up, where whatever seeking, finding, working, that tops out and almost becomes a hindrance to the possibility that wants to emerge. And this is my language. When we can click into it, a click. Let's call it a click for our purposes today, right?
A double click.
Or a double click, to use Barnett's computer analogy. But maybe an internal click even, where something new emerges. I'd love to have you shed some light on that from your experience when people have this kind of fundamental shift in who they are, and who they were is not who they are, and this becoming sense of possibility that's emerging.
Yeah, maybe one interesting thing is that in what you're talking about, the difference between maybe what you can call self-improvement and waking up, which may not be the same thing, is that self-improvement very much is about becoming the butterfly, starting as a caterpillar, and hopefully throughout the course of your life, through all your invested time and resources, you'll turn into a butterfly. However, waking up is about the nature of both, the nature of the caterpillar and the nature of the butterfly, and developing an appreciation for that nature, which allows for the transformation in the first place, and recognizing that that is who we truly are, and moving into that paradigm, into that awakening, then makes us appreciate our nature, whether we are a caterpillar or we are a butterfly.
We become who we're with. We become who we're with energetically, whether the with is embodied or we are open to withness of disembodied energies and frequencies and resonances. And so there is some great importance to the relationships that we create and the relationships that we devote attention to, and the relationship between guides, those that are mentored and those that are guides. You both have worked together for quite some time. I know you both really well. And so what are some of the mysteries of the relationship between somebody that is, as you are, Inga, passionately pursuing not just mystery, but at this point mysticism, and the relationship of being guided in that way? How do those balances play out? What is that like?
I think I got lost in the question, but
So did I.
What I'm thinking about is the relationship that I have with Dawa, and when I met him and looked in his eyes, I immediately recognized my teacher. I'm 56. I've never really had a teacher, and for a year and a half now, I have just I'm coming to understand what it is to have a guide, someone who's leading me back to myself. And having trust in myself and discovering my own good qualities, and that I am enough, and that everything that I want everything that I love is all inside of me, because I love when I experience my good nature, my trust, that I'm my generosity, when I experience those qualities. And Dawa is the guide, and my beloved friend, and my spiritual teacher, and my coach. And I just, when he speaks, like right now, I'm so touched. One of my special gifts is I cry. I cry easily.
That's great.
And,
I love that perspective.
So I love this man.
It's really fun when we go to comedies.
Shut up.
That's right. Shut up.
But I love, I call Dawa the spiritual love of my life. And Jack, my husband, he fell, as soon as he met Dawa, he fell in love with him too. He just really is such a lover and an understander of where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. And I trust him to guide me to that. And I get very afraid, and but I'm willing to face these things because I feel so safe and supported. I know that he's going to lead me there. I 100% trust him.
So I'd like to use some words. They were going to be my words, but as a coach myself, part of my job is to hold a vision of possibility for my clients that sometimes I can see and maybe they can't, right? So I'm seeing in them something essential that's wanting to emerge, but that they don't have the modulators for or whatever yet, right? So the idea is to love them into a kind of emergent self, or love them into a possibility. I don't know if that's the right language, but there's some way of holding the person you're working with to where it's like they're learning to ride a bike, and you're the training wheels, or you're the support. But it's them, and it's theirs, It's not something that we as coaches or facilitators are necessarily doing. We just can create the space that has what you're talking about: safety, understanding, feeling seen, feeling safe, supported. How do you, either of you can comment on this?
Well, I'll let Dawa talk, but the compassion is the biggest quality that I've experienced with Dawa. Whatever I'm going through, he holds a space with so much compassion. I've never experienced someone that brings that word to such full to life, and that brings I'm so motivated to be the person, like be like Dawa when I grow up. That's what I always say. I want to be like, because that compassion quality is everything. It's teaching me everything.
Yeah, compassion opens up for sure.
I think, we met also, a lot of us are in this organization called the Transformational Leadership Council, which is an organization that I guess is supposed to bring together people that have an appreciation for transformation and have a confidence in this process of transformation. What I often see with people is that they think transformation is something they have to actively push rather than something they have to recognize as being their own nature. Yeah? Transformation is our nature. We're born into transformation. We come in here and we're a couple of pounds and barely more than 2 feet tall, and here we're sitting. Most of you are 6 feet strutting guys. You didn't start like this. You didn't come in like this. So your nature is transformation. And to lead someone towards accepting that, recognizing that, gaining confidence in that, learning how to be vulnerable with that, how to trust that, and to invest in that reality rather than run from it. I think that is really grounded, healthy, sane spiritual work.
That's beautiful. We're going to take a quick break because we have some pieces of our transformation that are required transform into our other role.
We're going to sell some cars.
Well, that's one of our roles.
Okay, let's do it.
So I want to come back that our nature is transformation, because that's a huge door to open and consider. But we'll do that after this break, so stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you for sticking with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. We're back with Dawa and Inga and Freeman, and of course me, Barnet Bain. Before the break, Dawa, you were talking about this understanding that we are already naturally unfolding, naturally growing into the discovery of the more of that we really are, and that it is a naturally occurring process. So there is so much efforting around and struggle around this belief that that many of us we live in a culture that teaches us that we have to strive and we have to compete and we have to become more and we have to fix things and change things. And so, do you see it as a teacher's role to educate how we come to be socialized in that way? What is the balance between allowing people to become aware of how they got in, like a ship in a bottle, how they sailed into the bottle, and that how they can put the clutch in and allow creation to dissolve the bottle around them? How do you balance that?
Good question. Not such an easy question, but I think the first thing is to recognize that you're born into a situation where everyone around you says run as fast as you can, and you don't really know why you're supposed to run, what you're supposed to run from, or where you're supposed to run. And so by the time you grow a little more mature, you may ask yourself, why am I running so fast, and where am I running to? There's a great little YouTube clip that shows air traffic in 24 hours around planet Earth. And when you see this clip, you realize humans are a little bit manic in the way that they are spinning around this planet in the middle of space at an ever-increasing rate without anybody going anywhere. And if we look at that, you realize we must be really afraid of realizing who we are, where we are, why we're here, and what we're actually doing here. And so just in order to escape those questions, gaining an ever greater velocity of momentum of going around the same place in circles. And I think the process of spiritual maturity is about slowing that down and just saying, okay, besides pursuing all of these achievements and all of these attainments and the quality of impact that I can have as a human being on the lives of others, let me also spend some time investigating where I am and who I am while I'm here. And I think in order to have a satisfying life, it has to be a combination of both, exploring who we are and where we are, as well as increasing our ability to have positive impact. So it's a balance.
That balance, this frenzy of airline activity and inner thinking and strategizing and trying to outthink life itself.
Or win the race.
Win the race, or get the guy, or get the job, or create safety, or forestall.
I'm exhausted just thinking
push
about
back the snow. So all of this in the doings of all of this, we abandon our feelings. One of the beautiful things about you that I know of you, Inga, for those of you who don't see. One of the beautiful things about Inga is that you're very, very in tuned and intimate with your emotions. And I, for one, I'm increasingly aware of how much I retreat from my emotions by busyness, by frantically flying around the world, literally and figuratively, by being on my device or even in the car. Recently, my car radio broke, and I've decided not to fix it, so that I don't have the ability to distract, but this addictive distraction from the discomfort that I have with being in my body and in my feelings. And underneath that discomfort, as I pay attention to it, it sort of moves away, and there's a whole menu, a whole repertoire of vitality, of aliveness in my body that I'm only beginning to become intimate with. And I want to know how you have come to this incredible intimacy with it, and how you bring that to your work with Dawa.
Well, I think one of the things Dawa's brought to me is, my emotions were so strong because I just came in. I'm wired and I'm very kinesthetic, so I experience the world through my emotions primarily, more visual.
Sure.
I'm more than visual and anything else. But in the past, my emotions had a tendency to carry me away. Just jump on that cloud of that emotion, whatever it is, and not be grounded. And now that texture, those emotions are through them is my being. So I can feel my emotions, but my awareness has grown to a point where I can experience my being while being really afraid. My dog had to go to the emergency room last night, and I was really afraid. But I felt the that grounding underneath me, the knowing that the life and death and all these parts are natural. And I'm starting to experience that in a very calming, peaceful, deep way.
Often on this show we reference past shows, and one of the things that we talked about.
We should reference future shows.
We can do
that
that
too.
too.
Would be a switch up.
That's next time, or maybe we'll do it today. I don't know.
You remember what we did next year? That was fantastic.
Yeah,
what
that's
we
right.
did next year.
The piece, though, that I want to reference is trusting our feelings, and that seems out of the gates like good advice, and yet on one of the shows we were saying, well, trusting feelings when they become trustworthy. When our feelings are held in very narrow storylines, right? So we have a feeling, and the first storyline is it's good or bad. That's where we're like already tipping into something that's not going to be helpful. But that is our first association with feelings. Oh, that's a bad feeling. Oh, I'm feeling bad.
That's not a feeling, though. That's a head trip. That's already that's a
cocktail.
Yeah, that's already abandoning the feeling for thought about the feeling.
Well, this is what happens. We end up, the feelings, their natural state is dynamic and their natural state is mixed. But what we're taught at a very young age is to define them and organize them into categories. First, bad and good, and then to create stories out of them. And these narratives are very narrow. They're like along the lines of, they're inherited stories. They don't have depth and they don't have a life of their own. They're just what we inherit about a feeling and how it fits, right? So we have, I'm having feelings. Oh, love song, there's a place to put it. Or I don't know, wherever our expression is. What I'm getting to is because you're an artist, right? And that's a trustworthy place to put feelings, right? And because it generates a new narrative. It's not just retracking to the narrative that already exists. And in that context, your feelings become more trustworthy. But in the context of trying to order and organize them around these narrow ways of holding them, right? We find ourselves jumping on these little tracks that might even be addictive qualities. Like, we're doing a drama along the line of a particular feeling and our association with that feeling. Do you guys know what I'm talking about right now?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting where we come to, when someone's a feeler, and I am, how do I find outlets so I can begin to trust that feeling and the feeling so it doesn't become a head trip and it doesn't hold me so narrowly and I don't go running down those paths? Because sometimes those paths, that whole drama is not required. That I'd love for you to speak to.
I think a real big mistake is teaching children that vulnerability is a weakness.
Yeah.
And rather than letting them recognize that really what makes us into an evolved species is the fact that we have such access to cultivate emotional balance in the presence of uncertainty, which animals don't have that space, neither mental nor emotional. And so, unless they're very special creatures, which you find among the animals, very sophisticated beings, yeah. But so we're a species that carries our vital organs exposed to the world, which is highly unusual, and it means we have a quite significant degree of trust already into our environment. And so I think when we grow up thinking that vulnerability is a weakness rather than an asset, and that the right strategy is protection rather than wisdom, I think that's where mistakes are made.
Big time. And that's where creative expression is so brilliant. If
Yes.
I can find self-expression, all of a sudden this thing comes up in me, and this sense of, we've talked about with artistically, with flow state. It's this resistance to giving ourselves to some process, whether it's an acting experience or whatever, a painting experience, where we just go for it. And then this thing comes out and we're like, oh, that's who I am. So it's through the feeling modulators and the expression of that we discover ourselves, right?
Yes.
And yet, because we hold it so narrowly. And even creativity, and Barnet, you talk about this all the time. We've got this structured imagination where our creativity is fitting this self-expression in these little boxes of other people's songs and other people's movies and what's already been done before. That this natural, organic us that wants to emerge is clipped to fit into these I don't know what you call them, pre-existing or preordained possibilities. Thoughts on that, Barnet?
Well, I'm going to defer to Dawa and Inga on this. You spent many, many, many years in silence, in retreat, in silence, and presumably you accessed states of imagination beyond which imagination beyond which you could not imagine. At the time, prior to going into retreat, you accessed a sense of creativity beyond which you could not create prior to going into these states. And so you discovered more of who you could be beyond all the ways that you were socialized. And then at some point you decided you would bring the wisdom of knowing that there is being beyond logic and reason without losing sight of logic and reason. You would bring that into the world and be a beacon of potential for the others around you. What is the motive for that? Because I think it is in the motive, it is in the recognition of something that happened for you, that the answer to your question, that holds the answer to your question. It is, what is our real relationship to each other? What is our real relationship to all that is? What is the most sophisticated sense of it that you have glimpsed?
Well, it might tie interestingly to what Freeman said, is that if we're not just purely driven from a need for self-importance, I think most of the time is that we're responding to something we're perceiving either within us or around us. And so then creativity or self-expression is a manifestation of an inner gift as a response to a perceived situation. Either we perceive that around us or in ourselves. And so then that act, even though unrecognized, actually is an impulse of compassion in itself. Yeah, it's an impulse of the life in you to respond to the life around you. And I think it is that which naturally propels transformation. And that is also something we need to learn how to trust, that we're inherently actually good, and that our nature seeks to respond creatively and compassionately to the challenges it experiences on a day-to-day basis. And the willingness to open up to the full dimension of that challenge also brings out the ripening of the full potential of our being. If we're willing to embrace the full dimension of what it means to be a human, our potential can fully manifest as a response.
So, to that point, there are many, and there are certainly aspects of myself that hold the same point of view, that the world is a scary place, or that we need to control others, in parentheses, or they will control us. So I cop to under the carpet, holding and behind my back and under the table, pockets of that belief system as well. And I see it still in the world. I look at the world as a holodeck. It's all my own issues are reflected in there. When we go into meditative states, one of the gifts of the meditative states is that we begin to see that beyond how we hold the world, there is more, and that the boundaries of who we are not our thoughts and feelings, but the boundaries are really control. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, Inga is a very creative person, and I think she oftentimes doesn't overthink the process of allowing her being to respond naturally and creatively to her environment. And
that right there is brilliant. Just allowing your being to respond naturally and creatively to your environment. That's brilliant.
We write that down.
Well,
We're going to get a transcription of this.
we'll send you the show. You can
But
watch
this is
it.
so this is so important that you're speaking to, because certainly in the world around me, there's so much of a reliance and an overthinking, because I've become so good at thinking and overthinking that, and that most of those that I see around me, because that's the way I orient, you always find you always see what you are, you always find what you're looking for. I see that overthinking as a way to meet as a bridge to the world. The balance, one of the attractions of my friendship with you, Inga, is that you function very differently. And so it resets me constantly when I'm with you. It resets me that the whole world does not function the way I have been convinced that it does. And it allows me to open to a humility, because you have a very different connection with everything. That creates such a sense of possibility. It opens, swings open the doors of such imaginal possibility for me, that I can be in an entirely different way, and the world is not out trying to out-strategize me as I am trying to out-strategize it. So that's gorgeous, and it is also some of the fruit of a meditative practice.
Big time. Hey, we need to take a quick break. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. Everyone stay where you are.
Don't move.
Don't move. And we'll be back here
Don't
on
move.
Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with a whole room full of folks. Dawa and Inga, you're here with us today. I'm grateful. I'd say your last name, but Barnet listed like 12 last names.
Phillips.
Inga Canfield, I know you very well. Dawa Phillips. So before we left for break, there's so many things that you brought up that I'm personally going, wah! So let me go to one that I think is really interesting. And for me, the self-importance piece. And the sort of need for self-importance, and the need for validation, and the desire to have a voice, but really from a framework. What I heard, sort of in my own way underneath the conversation, in the meditative contemplative practices, there's an essential self that we can tap into, which is a greater form of validation than the external world that we've been seeking the validation in, right? And that is a doorway, perhaps, to a voice that, in the end of the day, will be more gratifying, fulfilling, but also may actually be important in the world. That's my thoughts on what I heard being expressed. I'd love for you to jump in and add whatever you have.
yes, absolutely. I mean,
Thanks for the validation.
so absolutely, it's actually very important, particularly during our time, because the nature of our being is wisdom, and our times demand wisdom. They demand a more widespread, more conscious, more applied form of wisdom than ever before. And so the work that each of us is doing in order to tap into our nature ultimately is desperately needed to address the challenges of our time. And we bring that with us. The fact that we're here in the first place makes us perfect vessels for that wisdom to manifest in a timely manner to address modern day problems.
And the
so
creative impulse. The creative
Yes.
impulse is the critical piece to begin to open up possibilities that will be what this time is requiring, right?
Yes.
And all times, really, but now we sort of see it turned up in terms of the intensity, right?
Yeah, and the best we can do is to be a bearer in our time.
Right.
and to not leave anything on the table while
I
we
love
were
it.
here, and to say, we made our contribution, and we opened up, and we surrendered what we carried inside, and we shared it, and we weren't stingy with it.
And not out of self-importance, but because we came to a place where we knew what we had to give and do and be, not because someone said, this is the way you win the game. We started off with the running analogy, right? Which
Yes.
is so apropos in this moment. Like, we're running. We're going to win. This is a lifetime of trying to win. I mean, that's the way our culture has it framed, right? It's a win-lose proposition, right? Are you a winner in your life or are you a loser?
It's also a piece of, we move in from this psychological sophistication, and then people discover the beginnings of consciousness or spirituality or metaphysics or however they hold it, and then they go to the piece where, wow, there's a whole nother toolkit that I can use in order to run faster, run better, compete more. This whole kind of
Right.
human
Big
potential,
time.
and
That's where we
I can
started
use
as
these
well.
tools to actually win more or win better, and it's fine. It's again developmental, but you are talking again to a state of maturity beyond that holds that is still a running. It is not an embracing of it's not an embracing of self in a centered way that opens to an experience of our connection with each other, that we are at the same time separate and connected simultaneously. This incredible paradox.
And our true importance. Because again, the self-importance is this kind of fragmented aspect. Each of us is important to find our voice and to give our gift. But it's not a self-importance. It's a kind of important because who
It's
knows?
not an ego importance,
Yeah,
but
because
there
who
is
knows
there
what it's
is
gonna
a
look
self
like.
I. There is a self I as opposed to an ego I. That I think it's the ego that says, well, it's not important. There is a self I that has yet to really acknowledge and own and experience the degree of our importance.
Yes, I agree with that 1,000%.
So, but prior, as we went to break, just before we went to break, I saw a whole bunch of fireworks go on behind your eyes.
Oh yeah, let's do
There
that.
was a number of things that you were itching to share, and I want to thread back to that.
And we're coming up to this anniversary of JFK's assassination, and I think he actually he tried very much to embody many of the things that we're talking about today as well. And one of the things that I recently heard a politician express, modern day politician, was that not to pray that the challenge meets our capacity, but that the capacity meets the challenge. And which, no matter whose mouth it came from, nevertheless rings true with the fact that we can pray for our human potential to manifest in order to meet the need around us, rather than manifest in a way that gives us a chance to avoid, deny, escape, not even get in touch with the need around us. Yeah, and it's just in the beginning. It's just a state of mind. It's a shift in the state of mind. I really wish that my being can mature in a way that others can benefit from it. Versus, I wish that my being can mature in a way that I can be the only one benefiting from everybody else.
That's
And so it's just a very small shift in mindset with tremendous consequences, which leads to, or maybe connects with what you were saying about this inherent but small shift in motivation.
It's maturity. I mean, from my perspective, there's a kind of maturity growing up moment.
Dawa has switched my thinking, and I feel like I have all this wind in my sails because everything that I'm trying to mature into to express what is uniquely that I can benefit other beings with it's so full of aliveness now.
Yeah.
It's like I feel tingly. I feel more alive and motivated than I ever felt in my life, and I feel like this is what my precious life is supposed to feel like. So
I love that language too.
That's
precious
great
life.
language, my precious life.
Mm.
You were speaking about, you referenced JFK. That period was referred to because the energy that wove through those few days was so palpable that it was referred to as Camelot. And maybe our finest hour in terms of that turn of the spiral. Not to say that subsequent hours are less fine, but there are peaks and troughs in any voyage of discovery. So when I look at that, it occurs to me that in that Camelot metaphor, there was this equanimity, the table round, the knights, each representative of a particular energy, a frequency of graciousness and chivalry and civility and courtliness, and all of these. They seem very quaint and old-fashioned, but they, more than ever, are the frequencies that are so, the world is so hungry, so parched for these generous frequencies of connection and compassion, and their counterparts in the feminine experience of them, also the connectivity and the belonging, the table round itself.
It's a round table. That in itself, metaphorically, is
and
huge.
no particular frequency,
no hierarchy.
Particular night. Yes, was any. They all had to be in balance, and the still point was at the center.
Yeah, in a round table, sanity is the leader.
Say that again.
Said
That's
in
good.
a round table environment, sanity becomes the leader.
Yeah. And what binds us, so what keeps us all at the table, there is a focus in the middle, a held intent that everyone shares in, or a held vision or something that everyone feels like they come to the table with something. And the middle is such an important point.
Yes.
What is held in the middle? What do we all share that we can put into the middle, that we can bring to the table? And in essence, the table can handle it, right?
The table can handle it, and everyone, nobody walks away a loser.
That's big in this running, winning craziness that we've created. That doesn't fit the present operating system or program or whatever the language was we started with, right? It's not how we've been. We need a new icon because that's not how we've been operating.
We need something new to double
That's
click
the double
on.
click.
Well, and the word click, that it's a click because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We're under massive misunderstanding, and we need to. I just came out of retreat, and I feel like I got reversed. Like
Say more about that.
Being with Dawa for 5 days, and like my being and my true nature, that's what my life's about. Not the doing, getting, outcome-driven type of life. Not that I was really steeped in that, but I really more than ever know that my meditation, my practices help. That's the ground, that's the place where I drink the water and get nourished so that I can actually live this life.
And you're not running.
And I'm not running. Right now, the retreat is in me. It was 5 days ago, and this is the first time the retreat has come home with me. And it's not a thing I go to. It's a thing that I want to live in, bring home, and
That's
wear
fantastic.
every day. It was. And it is.
Well, just that awareness that for me, there's a lot of touchstones, moments in my life where I glimpse something. But the challenge, of course, is to bring it home. What you just said is so powerful. How do I integrate this so that this isn't just something I go to? It's sort of compartmentalized, or, these are, we do this in our lives. Because it's challenging in the present program to stop running, to have moments, to know, okay, I have a glimpse of this, but then there's all these compartments where it doesn't seem to fit. Can you speak to that? This bringing it home, this ability to stay with it and to take it into daily life.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a decision. I think acknowledging that you do have free will, or at least exploring the possibility that you do have free will, and coming to a place where you make a decision to not forget yourself.
I love that. And that's the click.
Because it's so easy to forget yourself, and at the cost to you, your loved ones, your community, everybody. If you lose, if you let's say if you forget yourself, everyone is worse off for it.
Yeah, you don't have much to bring to the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in the way that you just framed it, Inga, your experience on retreat of redoubling your relationship with yourself because of who you are, not what you do. Imagine if, as children, we were raised knowing that we were loved for not what we do, but who we are. That would be a very, very different experience.
Very different program.
Very different program.
The foundation, there'd be a real foundation. Out of that foundation, you can do a lot. But without that foundation, the doing never quite satisfies.
Well, and so one of the things we've talked about before in this show, which is just so valid and worth repeating, is that the creative process is always an unfolding. And yet, when we're kids and even as adults, we get it. We have a moment, a magic moment, right? A flow moment. It goes great. And then we look at that, or people point to it and say, that's so great. Do that again. There has to be a kind of, I don't know what the word is, but the ability to go, no, we don't do it again. We understand what the quality was, but we're not tied to it. Because I feel like we're so outcome driven. And everyone, when we get an outcome, it's like, oh, let's repeat that. Well, let's not repeat it. I mean, that's the whole point. We don't want to just keep repeating the same song over and over. How about writing a new one? How about finding a new moments?
And on the way over here, Inga and I spoke about this experience she had of bringing home the retreat. And I lead a lot of retreats, but most of the time at the end of the retreat, I take some time to say, don't try to hold on to what you experienced here. Because if you do, it'll turn into pain for yourself and for those around you, because you're going to be constricted. You're going to be trying to recreate or hang on to past experiences or past moments of being. And so I think what she was describing, which is tying into what you were saying, is how do we manage to stay in the present, knowing that we can discover the quality of the present each new moment.
Yeah.
So I see my co-host waving a finger here. Now, is that a finger of timing or admonition?
No, just timing.
Timing. And what does that mean?
Well, you can interpret however you want.
I can't, exactly. It's a Rorschach test.
We have come to the end of the show. Before we let you go, I would love for you to share with our audience some of the information about where people can find this retreat and all of the work that you do.
Yes. So there's a couple of resources. One is a leadership company that I founded in 2007 where people can find coaching and consulting for their lives and their organizations. It's called Empowerment Holdings. The website is empowermentholdings.com and the email is info@empowermentholdings.com. I do research in cognitive neuroscience with meditation and children and adolescents, and that is at UCSB. People can find us there. And then I'm the resident teacher of the Bodhipath Buddhist Center in Santa Barbara.
Bodhipath Buddhist Center in Santa Barbara on 7 Mission Street. Every Thursday night is from 7 to 9 practices, and Dawa often teaches, and it's amazing.
30 West Mission and number 7, and there are public teachings on meditation and mindset.
Perfect.
So we thank you. That information will also be available on our website, folks. Inga, I love you. Thank you for coming. Dawa, I love you. Thank you for coming.
And we thank you
Freeman,
for tuning in.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And we thank you for showing up every week. Keep tuning in to Cutting Edge Consciousness.